Hello and welcome to the MMQB Monday Morning NFL Podcast. I'm Gary Gramling.
I'm Jenny Brentis.
I'm Conor Orr.
And guys, we had a Sunday full of surprises. And perhaps no game was more surprising than the one that took place Sunday night here. The Ravens are not home underdogs very often, but considering the rash of injuries and considering the recent history against the Chiefs, I don't think anyone really considered them, serious contenders to knock off Kansas City finally. But here we are. It's the end of the night. Lamar Jackson had a huge game, and the Ravens have finally knocked off the AFC two-time defending champs here.
Yeah, and of course the pivotal moment was that 4th and 1 decision where John Harbaugh from the sideline yells in, Lamar, you want to go for this? And you could very clearly read his lips. And Lamar, of course, said yes, he wanted to go for it. There was a little bit more than a minute to go, punting it back to the Chiefs with that much time on the clock. With the Chiefs, they would have just needed a field goal. The odds of that against Patrick Mahomes, not the best, right? And Lamar Jackson had the confidence to go for it on 4th and 1, and John Harbaugh had the confidence in his quarterback to allow him to make that decision. And if they didn't get it, they would almost certainly lose. But getting that first down, they solidified the win. And I think it was just a example of that. You could say all you want about catching up to scheme or having more film on Lamar Jackson, but at the end of the day, he just has things that are hard to defend, even if you know what is coming. And in that situation, you knew that Lamar Jackson was going to be running the ball, and the Chiefs still couldn't stop it.
That's what I love about watching him play. And what was great about the Ravens offense up until this season was how much control it gave everybody over everything. And when you put Lamar Jackson on the field, and then you put 3 really good tight ends on the field, and you put a fullback on the field, there's only a couple things that a defense can do schematically to stop you. And so it gives you so many options, and it gives you kind of a vice grip on the game. But then when all of your running backs get hurt, when your offensive line gets worse, when the receivers that you drafted to plan on diversifying the scheme don't materialize, there's kind of just Lamar. And what I thought was beautiful about the game was just that in the face of all these kind of moronic doubters that are saying that the league is caught up to him, or there's this idea that he's still not some kind of capable NFL passer, he's putting a team on his back and beating the best offense in football. The Chiefs had a 91.6% win probability with like 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, and they were up 11 points. And they came back and won that game. I mean, the jump pass was unbelievable. He was front flipping into the end zone. He's just the most electric player in the NFL.
There was just a wonderful tinge of recklessness to everything the Ravens did offensively tonight. And when they had to execute, they executed. Their offensive line was excellent in this game after just an embarrassing performance last Monday night in Las Vegas. And, plenty of credit there. No Ronnie Stanley, no Tyree Phillips, Alejandro Villanueva, who just struggled immensely, for 2 seasons now. Switches over to left tackle, holds his own enough. Patrick McCarry, a guy who is an interior lineman, kicks out to right tackle. They won at the line of scrimmage for the most part. But when it came down to it, it was basically Lamar just being too fast, too good to stop. And even with the mistakes he made in the passing game, because he did make mistakes in the passing game, and you live with it right now. And there's this sort of hand-wringing that, okay, we want Lamar Jackson to be a complete quarterback and run this expansive offense where we can attack outside the numbers and attack downfield, and it's not there yet. And it might not be there anytime soon. They brought in a couple of receivers who were hurt all summer, but this is good enough to win. This is good enough to win a lot of games. This won a lot of games the last 2 years, and as much as all these, whether it's defensive coaches or front office coaches, front office types who want to go around and say, we figured out Lamar, well, you can know where he's going and still not stop him. We've seen that plenty of times now.
Yeah, and this was an important game, not just to not fall into an 0-2 hole, but also because, like you mentioned earlier, Gary, that their history against the Chiefs. And it's just like, this is the benchmark in the AFC. And so if you are going to do the things you aspire to do, you need to measure up to the Chiefs. And so this kind of game, especially on the heels of a difficult loss on Monday night, on a short week, having to fly home after that game. I mean, and then they come out and they issue this kind of win against the Chiefs. And I think I go back to that moment with Harbaugh because it's really why they've gotten to this point all along has been Harbaugh's confidence in Lamar Jackson and his commitment to developing him and to going all in on an offense that was unique and different and that a lot of other people around the league had doubts about. I mean, we saw this same confidence 2 years ago in Seattle when there was a similar fourth down decision and Harbaugh asked Lamar then in his second season if he wanted to go for it. He did it again tonight. And I think the reason that you get to a point where you can have a big win like tonight is because you have a coach like Harbaugh that's willing to put that kind of confidence in his player and understand that, you know, it doesn't always look like anything else in the NFL. It might not always look like you want it to look, but there are moments like that one where it's 4th and 1, you give Lamar Jackson the ball and you're pretty confident he's going to get the first down.
I remember, Jenny, you and I covering that Baltimore San Diego Chargers playoff game where Lamar had taken over midseason for Joe Flacco, and there were people in the stands calling for Joe Flacco to come back out because they wanted him to play in that game. And after the season was over and John Harbaugh wrapped up the season with his press conference, I remember him coming out and saying that, you know, we're going to double down on the things that Lamar Jackson does well, and we're going to get players who can hold on to the football, and we're going to get guys who can block downhill. And I just remember how radical at the time that sounded, you know, for a coach to really kind of come out and to say like, no, this is what we're going to do. I mean, the entire stadium was like booing this guy, and it's like, no, we have a vision for this, and it's just phenomenal to see. I mean, and even now, that vision doesn't exist because all the players that help make it work, all the ancillary pieces are hurt. And so it's still just like their support and the infrastructure has led him to be empowered enough to just be this player who can transcend anything.
So they ended up with 41 rushing attempts for 251 yards. That includes the kneel down to end it. And again, he made a couple of mistakes in the passing game. I mean, he threw a pick six in the first quarter. He throws another interception, nearly threw a third one to Tyrann Mathieu late in this one, but Mathieu couldn't hang on. But the good just outweighs the bad by so much, especially on a night like this that, you know, everyone wants to sort of reinvent this, and yeah, you want to get better at the parts of your games, at the parts of the game that are maybe not your strength, but I don't know. It just seems like there's not much of a rush to get it done here. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is just the approach the Ravens took defensively against the Chiefs here, and I don't know if you chalk this up as a win. We've seen other teams play better against Patrick Mahomes and limit him, but I think considering what the Ravens have right now defensively and all the injury issues, the fact that they went out there and just sort of played coverage, it doesn't seem courageous, because I think in the end, if you blitz a ton and you just get burned, you can kind of be like, well, we're the aggressor and we were proactive about it and it just didn't work out. But if you sit back and coverage get picked apart, then you were the dope who like sat back and just let the guy throw for 1,000 yards on you. But it got to the late fourth quarter here, you know, after that long Travis Kelce catch and run touchdown, and the Chiefs really didn't do anything offensively after that.
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing about the Chiefs is like, not that the Browns played them the same way defensively, but I think since the Super Bowl, I have seen them less as an offense and more of just a collection of playmakers and a coach who kind of understands how to isolate them. And I think that there's a big difference between those two things, even though one is a big part of the other. And that's what's been interesting about this, is that Kansas City is still winning on the strength of, you know, Travis Kelce getting the ball in space and being able to move the ball upfield. And it's not necessarily, I think, part of this bigger fluid picture. And, I'm not saying this is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. I mean, Andy Reid is one of the most brilliant schematic minds in football, but I think we're nearing the end of the Chiefs kind of being able to just beat up on teams like you would, and this is like a crude analogy, but like as you would like almost in like a flag football game, right? Where it's like our guys are faster than your guys, deal with it, And I think that we're maybe perhaps nearing the end of that, whereas teams aren't really able to slow them down, but I think that their ability to do that is just going to dwindle as their rare collection of skill position players gets older.
I think what was notable too about the Ravens' defensive performance is that they had a lot of players step up into roles that, we hadn't seen before or that are new in these roles, right? Cornerback, Marcus Peters is out for the season. Jimmy Smith is out. And we have this fantastic pass breakup on third down with Anthony Averett covering Tyreek Hill. That's an incredibly difficult assignment that we see corners struggle with regularly and breaks up the pass. And then we also see not the most decisive play of the game, but the second most decisive play. Odafe Owe strips the ball from Clyde Edwards-Helaire and recovers it. And that was a player when going into the draft, you always heard he had trouble finishing plays at Penn State. But I think the Ravens understood correctly so that there are some players that don't finish plays, and then there are some players that just don't have the sack numbers. And I think he's one of those guys that can finish plays, but just didn't have the sack numbers at Penn State. And so those were two examples, I think, of how you defend the Chiefs, even when you've had a roster that's been ravaged by injury.
It's interesting where, people have always kind of climbed on the Ravens for their inability to draft wide receivers and Pittsburgh in the same division being a wide receiver factory. But Baltimore, I don't know if there's a team that, depth included, like in first round all the way through the back end of a draft, can just continuously replenish this defense with complementary players. And, they'll get a cornerback in the fourth round one year, or, a pass rushing specialist in another mid round. And this is just another example of them knowing themselves so intimately on that side of the ball, and then really special plays coming from that.
It was, and look, tonight I think was also a testament to when you play the Chiefs, you kind of just want to hang around and hope you get that break at the end of the game. We saw this; it broke the other way for the Browns last week. They end up giving up the one big play, and then the punter fumbles the snap, and then they lose the game. This one turned the other way. Ravens get the turnover late in this one, and just finally knock off Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and four-way tie atop the AFC North. How exciting. So the Sunday afternoon, that late afternoon block was just full of thrillers. And we're going to start with, it was certainly the longest game of the day. It was the most fascinating game of the day, I think. But the Titans win out in Seattle, where they kind of, I don't know, it looked like they were left for dead at a couple of points. And we could do entire shows singing the praises of Derrick Henry, but it's true. They came back from a 15-point deficit in the second half behind their running back. Who does that?
Mike Vrabel does that, and Derrick Henry does that. That's who. But yeah, it's a unique thing where the Titans' offense is so typically viewed as ball control. And, you almost think of them almost as an academy, like an Army or a Naval Academy offense, where if they get down that far, they're not able to get back. But, I mean, Derrick Henry, the difference between the first half and the second half was outrageous, along with the fact that, it does open things up. And I know it sounds so old-fashioned and trite to say that you need to run the ball well to pass the ball well. That's not true. However, if you run the ball really well and you're averaging 5.2 yards a carry, which is what Derrick Henry was averaging, then you start throwing the ball really well. That's when you get Julio Jones involved. Derrick Henry was a big part of the passing game, too. He caught all 6 of his targets today. And so, that really kind of opened up the Titans after a really poor showing in week one, and showed that Henry's not going anywhere. I mean, 35 carries, Workload has never been a concern in Tennessee, despite all the kind of obvious benchmarkers of heavily used running backs over time. And so it's fascinating. I mean, he keeps trucking.
And I think because of the way they fell behind in week one and then could just never get back into the game, once Seattle opened up a big lead, it felt like it was over. And in the first half, Henry had 35 yards. So it wasn't like he was a big factor in the game, but you always hear, and it is true, that bigger backs get better as the game goes on because the opponent gets fatigued and tired of trying to take them down. And obviously in the second half alone, he had over 100 yards, and that's really where he came alive. So, there were some concerns after week one, like they lost offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. Was this offense out of sorts? But I think this was a showing where they did fall behind, and then they proved that they could still get back into the game using what they do well, which is run the ball and be run first. And also the fact that Henry has the ability to break off those really long touchdown runs to quickly score is unique among running backs. That I think he has more of those scores. I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but he always has these long runs that just quickly change the game.
I think the last one I remembered was, I think out of all the people since 2018 of scores of 20 yards or more, he's the first running back by a country mile, and I think is second only to like Tyreek Hill. So it's phenomenal, like the fact that that's a home run threat. And I think we get impatient because the analytics are there, that it is more effective to pass the ball than to run the ball. However, if you are running that way, then what does it matter? I think if you have a back that transcends the typical running back offense relationship, who cares? Just keep throwing him the ball, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns in the second half there, including that 60-yarder down the left sideline. That was just such vintage Derrick Henry. And we talk about all the time how he affects the passing game. I wrote more words about Todd Downing than probably anyone would ever care to write or read in a lifetime in my Sunday morning column. And he took a lot of heat for what happened week one, but in reality, that game was done after the first quarter. They were trailing. It was a 3-possession game on every one of their possessions from the second quarter on. So they really had to throw out anything they planned on doing against the Cardinals, and you really couldn't get a read on what they were going to be. This looked like Arthur Smith's offense. I mean, it was called that way. They're still maybe a little bit more run heavy on first down than they were a year ago, but this is kind of what it is. And Ryan Tannehill is excellent for the system. I would call him like a game manager plus type of quarterback. His third and long numbers are just not very good. That's just been the case the last 2 years when the scheme kind of can't give him the kind of assistance he needs. He just hasn't really been able to deliver. However, when they get into second and manageable, third and manageable, they stay ahead of the sticks because of Henry, or because working the play action off of Henry when Henry sucks up those linebackers so much because you need to get your hands on him early in the down. That makes a huge difference here. So Tannehill ends up throwing for 347 here on a day when I think CBS had 6 drops for the Titans receivers here, and A.J. Brown had 3 that would have been huge plays. I mean, they might have won this game by 10 points if the receivers played better in this one. But this looked like the Titans' offense. They did it without Taylor Lewan. They lost Roger Saffold during the game, so you're missing half your offensive line. It was a really encouraging day for them, or I guess you could say a really discouraging day for the Seahawks defense.
Well, really, it was good because week one was so strange and there were so many things happening that it just made me feel like I didn't understand football. And then watching the Seahawks give a game away and completely just freak out after amassing a first half lead really made me feel like the universe was right again. It's like, okay, we're the same movies on Christmas and the good dinners that you're used to, and this is fall. We're ready again.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if the early season optimism about the offense, obviously they have a new offensive coordinator, but will that wane like it did last season? And certainly the offense slowing in the second half and overtime was a little bit of a cause for concern.
if Connor was sort of thrown off by what happened in week one, this was no more comforting to him. The Raiders going east to Pittsburgh and stealing a game in which, look, the offense looks great. The defense played really well for a second week in a row. If I was Max Crosby's agent, I would immediately demand a trade to the Bengals or Browns and have him go out there and just amass 28 sacks a season against these AFC North opponents. But the Raiders are 2-0. They did it on a short week. They did it coming east on the road, and they look pretty impressive doing it.
Yeah, this was 2 weeks in a row that we've seen a quality win from the Raiders, and they did this on a short week as well, and traveling cross country, which is a difficult schedule quirk. And the fact that they were able to beat two quality opponents under those circumstances is pretty impressive. And as you referenced, Gary, Derek Carr really looks good. I mean, we've seen flashes through his career, right? There have been good seasons, and it's just never been, the best season he had, he gets injured, right? And then since Gruden has been there, it just hasn't been clear if they're actually gaining traction. It feels like Gruden, as usual, is half in with his quarterback. But for the first time, this really looks like a special combination, and it looks like Carr is comfortable and is like really coming into his own this season. I mean, it's only 2 games, but I don't think that's an overstatement based on what we've seen so far.
Editor Mitch asked me to write something nice about the Raiders, and so I was very close to complimenting John Gruden until I had the chance to go back and watch a lot of that game again. And the reality of the fact is, a lot of this doesn't have a lot to do with him. This is Derek Carr, like Jenny said, playing out of his mind. And what were the 2 things that everybody always got on Derek Carr about before the season? It was toughness and aggressiveness. He always checked the ball down. He didn't hang in the pocket and take big hits. And I was incredibly impressed, after Baltimore, which is an incredibly physical game. They were throwing tons of pressure at him. I think he was pressured 1 in every 4 snaps against Baltimore and made some of his best throws against those zero blitzes that Don Martindale likes to bring. And then you flash forward to Pittsburgh, pressured all the time. He took some vicious hits in this game and came back, led the team on a field goal drive after almost getting knocked out on one of these. And then the throw to Henry Ruggs at the end of the game that basically seals it for them was another one, a blitz where Pittsburgh had a free runner coming off the edge from the secondary, and he knew he was going to get plugged, and he stood in and he made a good throw. He made good throws against pressure, almost the exact same blitz against Baltimore that set them up for a game-winning touchdown. And I would say, there are things that you can tell Gruden does schematically that gets receivers open. But these last 2 games in particular have been about hanging in the pocket and making tough throws to receivers who are just open deep, or maybe or not even open deep, but you're throwing them open deep. And I think that's a testament to Derek Carr. And I think that he's always been like a top 11 quarterback, but I think now it's like we're ready to say it, and he's sort of embodying that quarterback style that we don't normally associate with him, if that's fair.
I will say that touchdown to Ruggs that came on a 3rd and 10, that was a matter of knowing the Steelers' tendencies as a team that blitzes a lot on third downs there, but it looked very similar to a touchdown that Ruggs had in Kansas City last year in an upset win over the Chiefs, where they had a tight end drawing the safeties in over the middle of the field and Ruggs firing off deep from a tight formation for a touchdown. So it was nicely drawn up, I would say. Kudos to you, John Gruden. Kudos to you.
I think Derek Carr called his own number on that one. So
I also have a caveat that I would like to add. Which is that the game did change once TJ Watt was sidelined with the groin injury. We saw him have his 2nd strip sack of the season in the first half, and then he got injured toward the end of the first half. A groin injury. Who knows exactly how any injury happens. It's possible anyway. But of course, you look back to the preseason when he was doing, a hold in and he was there working out every day, but you're not necessarily getting the same kind of reps you'd be getting if you were joining in full team drills. And sometimes it's not uncommon to see players who come back from a hold out or a hold in then get some kind of soft tissue injury early in the season. But with all that being said, it's not like the Raiders are going to be facing TJ Watt every week. He's one of the best defensive players, one of the best players in the NFL. So them winning and having a little bit more of a command of the game after he went out, I don't know how much of a worthwhile caveat it is, but I did want to mention it.
If you're looking at this from the Steelers side, Watt injury is a big deal. Offensive line struggled again. Roethlisberger, look, they attacked downfield a little bit more. Some of it was necessary because they were playing from behind for the second half. They trailed by 2 possessions for most of the second half. They need a couple more plays out of their receivers. A few too many passes hitting guys in the hands and maybe tough catches, but the kind of stuff you have to come down with if you are part of that vaunted receiving corps that they have there. But Raiders sitting there at 2-0.
Really disappointing loss for Gary's gang-busting Steelers, too. So
it's all right. We got 15 more to get it right. No worries.
To quote Gary.
Let's head out to Dallas, where I don't know. We'll get into the offense and defense, but like Greg Zuerlein, I don't know. Halftime Thursday night, we were waiting to find out if he would be fired mid-game or immediately after the game, and then he hits a couple clutch kicks there, and he's been money since. And in this one, he hits a 56-yarder as time expires to beat the Chargers on the road and get Mike McCarthy up to 500 here for Dallas.
And potentially bail out Mike McCarthy for some very questionable late-game clock management.
I've never seen a coach in my life strategically play for a 57-yard field goal to win a game, and he seemed just completely fine with the overwhelming odds that this wouldn't succeed. But that's Mike McCarthy. He's, we've seen coaches develop and then shake out of game management, clock management issues, that narrative surrounding them in the past. But this has always kind of been Mike McCarthy's, deal. And it was stunning on Sunday to see how this all shook out.
Yeah, watching it, I had the same reaction I did toward the end of the Penn State-Auburn game when there was the down skipped, and I was like, what am I missing? What's going on here? Am I misunderstanding? In the Penn State-Auburn game, there actually was a down skipped. But in this game, I was like, what are they doing? Am I misreading the clock? Like, is there something I'm not understanding about the situation? And but no, in this case, there wasn't. Like, there wasn't a down skipped, or there wasn't a clock skip, or, whatever other error to explain the situation. It was just poor clock management.
It's just putting trust in your kicker. Something that we'll get to Mike Zimmer later, who is living a nightmare now with the Vikings. But yes, this is a weirdly just outsized amount of trust to put in your kicker, who again might have lost his job 10 days ago if things hadn't turned in the second half. But as far as this Cowboys team goes, it was worth scratching your head a little bit about their run game offensive performance in the opener. It turns out that did just have a lot to do with the fact that the Bucs are very good at stopping the run. They're not great at covering on the outside, so the Cowboys attacked a weakness. In this one, they got the run game going. This was all about the run game and some nice complementary football from the defense that is, it's not a great defense, but it's a whole lot better than it was a year ago. But Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott end up combining for 29 carries, 180 yards on the ground here. Then they get some leftovers here from Dak and Cedric Wilson on a receiver run. But they ran the ball effectively. They kicked the ball effectively, and they played good defense. And it just looks like, hey, this is kind of a good football team now.
I guess, right? Like, they're fine. And that's what's hard about any team in the NFC East, but particularly Dallas. It's okay, right? I think the most interesting aspect to it is their willingness to not move on from Ezekiel Elliott, but to really feature another back. And Pollard's versatility has opened up that offense in a way that we've never really seen before. And, you could tell that was one of those things that maybe like Kellen Moore had drawn up, but until everybody left, until Jason Garrett went away and like maybe Jerry Jones left the facility one day and then he just got to quickly add it all to the playbook really fast because it made Ezekiel Elliott somewhat irrelevant. And so I think a lot of that helps. And Dak Prescott is still Dak Prescott. So just seeing kind of the way the rest of this division is behaving right now, it would seem that they have a very clear path to sort of become the pace setters here, as long as they can, as you said, continue to play good defense, continue to run the ball somewhat effectively.
Yeah, Pollard was definitely a spark. Having Zach Martin back helped. I would say, though, it's really notable that the Chargers really shot themselves in the foot with their penalties. I think it was like a dozen penalties. Obviously, taking touchdowns off the board. So there was just some sloppiness that the Chargers are going to have to clean up. But I mean, Herbert was tremendous. Obviously, he had the end zone interception. But listen, there are going to be mistakes like that. Had they not had all of those penalties, it would have been a different game.
Yeah, 12 penalties here for the Chargers, and as you mentioned, Jenny, one of them took a touchdown off the board, and then Herbert threw an end zone interception there. I don't know. I think Brandon Staley is just maybe studying other head coaches, and this is the week he laid out on Joe Judge as far as what they were going to do this week. But
it's weird. Like, I had a strange observation in this game, and I don't know if anybody else is with me, but I like Brandon Staley, and his he's had some of the best like training camp mic'd up segments that I've ever seen. Like, he gets me fired up sitting there at my kitchen table. But between him and Mike McCarthy, it was a battle of two very unintimidating people trying to yell at officials. Like, a lot of times when I watch games that are very tense at the end of a game, I often feel there's a very slight edge to the scarier coach. Like the coach that the referees are like, could be physically more scared of. Like, they're like chasing them up and down the sidelines and yelling at them. And I watched both of these guys yelling at the officials, and I thought, it's, that's like the game where if you're a high school ref, you're like, I'm not throwing any of these parents out. They're just silly. They're just being goofy, So I think both of them need to work on their angry faces. That would be that's my hot take for that one. They need to really try to get the angry face down a little bit more.
I mean, Mike McCarthy's getting the gray beard going. He's working on it.
I feel like that makes him less scary in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like the gray beard, it depends. There's a lot of variables here, and I think in his case, the gray beard signifies warmth to me, friendliness, and just like kind of a guy you'd want to have a hot chocolate with after the game. To be honest.
We're going to have to do a power ranking of head coaches who might be most intimidating for officials. I mean, obviously Belichick would be at the top of the list because of his, delivery, but Vrabel would be pretty high up there, I imagine, just physically intimidating. But yeah, there's a fruitful discussion that could be had here, Connor. Thanks for raising the topic.
I would say Mike Tomlin when the Aviators are on, because like a lot of people, you don't know what's going on behind there, right? And so it's almost like a mental game with you're an official. You're like, he looks mad. Maybe he's mad. I don't know if he's mad, but I bet he's mad. And you can't see his eyes. That's one of those deals.
Just Brandon Staley's handsome baby face just coming back to burn him in this one.
Got to get rid of that HBF,
There was you folks can look it up on Twitter. It's out there. But the mic picked up John Gruden after a late first half penalty took points off the board for the Raiders. And it was just it's just a string of F-bombs in Gruden voice. And it was, I don't know, it was just kind of like it was much more jarring than just seeing them mouth it. Like, hearing the actual audible just string of profanity. It was like, oh, this is how like human beings talk to each other during these games.
Gruden, not surprisingly, my take, not very intimidating. But you know who he reminds me of is like did you ever see the video of the Mets manager Terry Collins losing it on an umpire? And that was when he said, "My ass is in the jackpot," or "Your ass is in the jackpot."
Yeah,
somebody's ass was in the jackpot, and then it was just like he's kind of just like a cute old man screaming. And Gruden's not like our producer Selby said, "Our ass is in the jackpot." That's what it was. So
there were multiple asses in the jackpot, just so we're all clear on this anecdote.
But it's like I put Gruden in that category where he's not quite cute old man yet, but he was like, most of us know him as like a TV guy or like he was the Corona man, and now like the Corona man is screaming at me, and it's just like, oh, okay, like you're just, it's not like Sean Payton after the Sean Payton during the NFC Championship game, where like that was scary. Like you saw rage in that man's eyes, and so I think that there's a difference a little bit.
So we had developments in Chicago. One of them is that the Bears are now a 500 team. They won this game, and I think the most encouraging thing about the way they won this game is they won it 2018 style. They took the ball away a bunch of times in the second half. 4 takeaways overall. At one point, they intercepted 3 consecutive Joe Burrow passes. One of them was a pick 6. This is how the Bears have to win football games if they are going to threaten anyone in the NFC.
Yeah, Roquan Smith had one of the picks and, tremendous performance. So there are definitely, a lot is riding on the defense because they started the season with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton gets injured in this game, and now it's Justin Fields' time, which was a decision Matt Nagy was obviously putting off. So now he can focus on Fields, but to this point, it's been sort of this, well, we're going to stick with Dalton until an undated point in the future when Fields will play. Well, Fields is in the middle of a game, which is not an ideal situation to be entering your first NFL regular season game for an extended period of time, not just for a snap here and there. So it was a good day for the defense to be taking the ball away and to be putting points on the board and to be, making it a lot easier for the quarterback to win.
It's so like, and I don't want to make excuses for Matt Nagy here, but watching these games, it's so interesting because I don't know what I would do if I were him either. I mean, I think, of course, Justin Fields is the player that you can do more with, but on any given snap, Jason Peters is, God love him, is doing the best that he can at 39. And there are some times, there was that play a week ago where he unconsciously sensed like a rusher coming from the backside and didn't even look and just turned around and threw a guy like 30 yards, But then there were so many, there were other plays this week where, he's cooked off the edge. If somebody just beats him, he beats him. And it's not because Jason is he's a Hall of Fame player and he's just 39, And so what do you do when I guess all quarterbacks have to plan for some version of attrition, but what do you do when in that unique circumstance where some of these plays might just kind of be cooked before they even start? And what do you tell a kid, just, okay, go in there and take a shot? Like, I don't know what you do. And so in a lot of ways, it's like, I'm starting to understand the Andy Dalton thing a little bit, and then kind of working him in waves like the 49ers are doing with Trey Lance. But at the same time, I don't know. It really is a rock and a hard place situation with them a little bit.
It is, because the supporting cast just isn't good enough to lift Andy Dalton, and is a solution, let's throw a young quarterback under center and just see what happens. Now, I think the solution is something having to do with a more creative running game that sort of slows down a pass rush and makes everyone on the defense think a little bit more when it's all said and done. Fields did not throw the ball particularly well in this game. He threw a really ugly interception. He moved it with his legs a little bit, but obviously the defense is what carried them in this one. But Andy Dalton suffered a knee injury. The severity at the time of our taping is unclear, and we'll see who gets run out there as their starter on Sunday. But it seemed like this was trending toward Justin Fields sooner rather than later, even coming into this game. And obviously this just speeds up the timeline at this point.
my Oracle prediction at the start of this season was halftime of the Bengals game, which is odd that it sort of, materialized in this way and kind of not the way that you would ever want to be right. But that said, I don't know. It's a difficult thing. There are a lot of quarterbacks that have played in this system before. You would assume that you could maybe go out and look for some depth, or I don't know what the answer is here, but I'm with you. I don't think playing fields right now makes a lot of sense, and we can all agree as a community that he is the best player, but I think if you know that you have the runway, and maybe Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace have been assured that they have some kind of runway, then the decision is obvious that you can't put him out there right now, because even against the Bengals, you were under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and I think especially when you haven't planned to put him out there. And Gary has made this point about Trevor Lawrence a lot, and Urban Meyer inexplicably splitting the preseason reps between him and Gardner Minshew, even though Lawrence was going to be the opening day starter. In this case, they planned all along for Andy Dalton to be the starter. They said, we're going to wait on Fields. He's going to sit on the bench. And then, of course, injuries happen and you can't predict it, but then he's thrust in the middle of a game. So, you haven't designed the game plan around what Fields can do, and you haven't given him all of the preparation for this moment. So, I mean, we were critical last week of why are they sticking with Dalton, because this is the kind of thing that can divide locker rooms. The defense is frustrated over having subpar quarterback play for multiple years, and so you want to put Fields in. But you make a good point, Connor, in that when the supporting cast isn't, supporting a strong performance, or you're not putting him in a position where he has a good opportunity to succeed, then there are negatives to that as well.
Bears are winners. Justin Fields may be coming soon. Interesting things in Chicago. We're going out to Arizona now, where I don't know how else to say it. Mike Zimmer is just living his nightmare. This is some sort of like existential horror he is experiencing right now with this team, where the secondary is not very good. They're not good at covering anyway, but they had a couple blown coverages in this one that just has to be absolutely torturing him. And then when it's all said and done, his kicker is set up with a 37-yard attempt to win the game and just pushes it wide. And they are 0-2 right now. And, it's a division where everyone doesn't look particularly great right now, but these are two games that the Vikings just sort of let get away from them.
And meanwhile, the opposing kicker makes a, 62 yard?
62. Matt Prater.
Matt Prater. Yeah. So, not only does your kicker miss the potentially game-winning field goal from a relatively short distance, but then the opposing kicker made a very unlikely long field goal that was close to double in length.
He hit the Vikings kicker, too. I mean, he hit one way longer than that before the half to give them the lead going into halftime. And, that's what puzzles me about this. But I mean, the only feasible explanation is that when Mike Zimmer was offered the head coaching job, the ghost of NFL head coaches said that you can have a long and illustrious career, but every great moment in your life will be eradicated by a frustratingly missed field goal. And he said, okay, ghost, sure, I can outcoach this. You can't. You can't do it. It happens with Blair Walsh. It happens in week 1 against the Bengals. It happens in week 2 against the Cardinals. You'll never be able to win again without a kicker.
Wow, Connor.
It's a very monkey's paw type of scenario that's playing out here. You can be a head coach, but we won't give you a kicker. And he says, oh, okay. It's not a big deal. It's not an important position.
Here's an honest question. If you were a head coach and you had these kinds of kicking issues, and Gary, I know you edited a story on Bears kickers, and I feel like that was an example of a coach perhaps overblowing one missed kick, which really wasn't a missed kick. I mean, it seemed like somebody blocked it anyway, whatever. But if you had this historically long stretch of awful luck with kickers, would you go supernatural with it? Would you start saging the locker room? Would you bring in outside forces beyond football to try to fix what does seem to be an eternally cursed situation?
I mean, I think the only way you can treat a kicker is you just like shrug your shoulders no matter what happens. Like I don't know. I think we saw from the Bears sort of, I don't know, comedic turn for that offseason. Like leaning into it and sort of playing it up as much as possible just sort of backfires in every way, shape, and form. And then they end up, 3 kickers later, just sort of like, oh, Cairo Santos. Wasn't he pretty good like 5 years ago for the Chiefs? Why don't we just bring him in? And Cairo Santos has been great for them. And that's kind of the answer when it's all said and done. But at some point, just a kicker is going to break your heart. What I'm wondering is, and the window on this is closing, but do we reach a point where some coach is just going to be like, I can't do this anymore, offer the Ravens like a first rounder and, I don't know, like 2 day 2 draft picks for Justin Tucker, and let's just never worry about this again?
No, because then you have the issue that you can create when you draft a kicker high.
Yep.
And then you get in their head, and the team has given up all of this capital for you. And even a kicker like Justin Tucker, who you think wouldn't affect, it seeps in there.
It's the Roberto Aguayo effect.
Exactly. You have to just make a really nondescript transaction in the offseason, and you also have to have a good special teams coach.
But if you fell into a coma the day after the Bucs drafted Roberto Aguayo and then woke up like last February, you'd be like, oh, Bucs are Super Bowl champions. Must have been that Roberto Aguayo. That's the cause and effect right here.
To Jenny's point, you need a good special teams coordinator, and you know what else you need? Because I'm never going to be able to bring this up again. I wrote it, and nobody read it at the time, and nobody's going to care about it now. But you need a kicking coach. You need a coach who is a kicker. Only like 3 teams in the NFL have this. They have a coach who used to be a kicker, who can talk to the kicker, and it costs nothing. I asked a couple people, I was like, what do you pay them as consultants? And it's not even nearly what you would pay an assistant coach. These kickers are just bored. They want to help, and they'll stand on the sideline and they'll help these other kickers because they're like, hey buddy, I missed a kick too. I know what this is like. Instead of a special teams coordinator who's usually just the coach's friend who they couldn't find a spot for, and then they're just like screaming at them and they don't know what the answer is. And so instead, you got to hire a coach who is a kicker. And the teams who do that end up having really good kickers. The correlation is there. So I believe that there should be more jobs for former kickers, and you wouldn't have this issue.
We're all about job creation on this podcast.
We are. We really are. And I should mention, as an aside, Kyler Murray threw for 400 yards and was incredible in this game, and ended up being the reason that the Cardinals won.
Also
besides a 37-yard missed field goal. I just real quick, I want to mention, this was another game where Murray made, spectacular out-of-structure plays. The offense looks good in structure. They're spreading the ball a little bit more than they have in the past. But there was a play that set up a 4th and 5 that set up what turned out to be the game-winning field goal for Matt Prater there, where it was a 0 blitz. Kyler Murray takes a snap and just sort of drifts back and throws a Russell Wilson moon ball that drops in perfectly to Christian Kirk. And I watched that play and I was like, that was really good, but we see that like every week now. Like I don't know if that play is as special as we feel it once was. And like 30 seconds later, I turned my gaze to the Falcons-Bucks game where the Falcons were in a similar situation and the Bucks sent a 0 blitz, and Matt Ryan kind of stumbles backwards and throws a low trajectory pass that gets batted straight up into the air and grabbed by a Bucks defender and run back for a touchdown. So I don't know. I guess it was a special play after all. That's the moral of the story, is that Kyler Murray is doing special things.
It was exceptional because he dropped back so far because he had to, because all the rushers were coming at him. So for him to drop back quickly enough to evade the rushers when you're backpedaling and they're going forward, right? And then also to regain your footing and to throw a pass that's on target. I mean, I thought that was exceptional. But as we saw last year, a big key is because their offense is reliant on Murray doing these special things, the key is for him to be fully healthy because any injuries impact his ability to create the way that he does, which we obviously saw last year when their hot start slowed, cooled off, whatever.
on that point, it is interesting that I wrote this down during this game. He has this ability to, when he's about to get sacked, make himself so like horizontal to the turf that like I imagine it still hurts a great deal, but hurts probably less than it does. Like he like goes down very fast, but like in a way that he's almost like one with the ground. It's very impressive. I don't know. I noticed that for the first time today, and that's like a luxury that a lot of other quarterbacks don't have.
Yeah, there you go. Doesn't have too far to fall. Okay.
Is this another way of saying that he's shorter than other quarterbacks?
The benefits of being shorter.
Okay. All right.
So, I don't know, guys. We might have to rethink the Carolina Panthers at this point as they host the Saints and just completely obliterate them. I mean, this was a complete outclassing of the Saints team that we were kind of saying, like, oh, maybe the Saints are a lot better than we think. The Panthers, look, they controlled the clock for almost 20 minutes in the first half. The Saints offense couldn't stay on the field. The defense couldn't get the Panthers off the field. It's really working out well. And whether you're looking at this defense that is incredibly fast and really, I mean, they're rising very quickly here. They might be one of the best units in football by the time we get to midseason, or just Sam Darnold just sort of playing calm and in control. And I don't know if you can get too optimistic about it at this point, but it's been a lot of good signs at this point, and he just looks like an NFL caliber quarterback, which wasn't often the case with the Jets.
Yeah, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I led my Tuesday column last week with how great the Saints defense was and that this was the key to the post-Drew Brees era. And then this week was not a great showing for the Saints defense, and they were fantastic against Aaron Rodgers last week and not so much against Sam Darnold this week. So go figure. But yeah, I think Darnold still has some of those Darnold tendencies that cropped up throughout his time in New York. And so I'm always skeptical that a quarterback will be able to rid all of those tendencies. But certainly, like, the two first games in Carolina have been encouraging. And yeah, Gary, maybe it's getting out of the city where you were a first-round draft pick and there's all this pressure. Maybe it's a better offensive system, better offensive coordinator, better team around you. I mean, obviously he has Christian McCaffrey, et cetera. So there could be a lot of reasons for it. But yes, it has been one of the season's early surprises.
I still can't make sense of the math, right? Because at first I was like, okay, well, it makes sense that we overrated a team that was buoyed by a good Jameis Winston performance, and we possibly we didn't really know what to think about a team that beat the Jets, and so it makes sense that we're sort of on even field here. But the fact that the Saints clubbed the Packers just throws my internal math off here. And to Jenny's point, I think going back and watching Sam, still the same quarterback, and I think, still uncomfortable going to one side of the field. There were interceptions that were dropped at critical times during this game that I think could have changed the scope of this thing very early. And I think that Jameis Winston turned back into a pumpkin. And so with all of that combining in, I think it's hard to make this a definitive narrative on Sam or a definitive narrative on anybody. But the Panthers are 2-0, and good for them. I think the one thing that we can say with some level of definitiveness coming out of this is that, this is Joe Brady kind of coming into his own a little bit. This is a good offense. This is, it's a well-designed offense. And if you remember when Sam Darnold was with the Jets and there was that Monday Night Football game where they put up like 40 points on Matt Patricia and everybody was saying that Sam Darnold was the future, a lot of this was the same stuff that he was doing in that game. He was, getting to roll out. He was, they established the running game first. They did all these things to put him in situations where he was super comfortable. And so I feel like this was just sort of a sensible game for the Panthers that just all of a sudden got really out of control for the Saints.
Yeah, look, Jameis Winston was awful in this one. There's no other way to put it. They couldn't stay on the field. He just didn't make any plays. Even his one really bad interception that everyone wanted to jump on, I didn't even mind that one because it was 3rd and 10. It was the end of the first half, and he's just throwing a prayer up that got intercepted. But he didn't do anything good. I mean, that's kind of the problem. So we maybe didn't learn anything that we can really grasp onto long term to this point, but I think we did learn that perhaps the transitive property is a lie.
No. You want to hear my chaos theory?
Yeah.
Okay, so it just came to me, and I have this habit of, as soon as something comes into my mind, you just got to say it, right? Because it's, no use putting it through the common sense filter.
Yep.
So the whole thing, the beatdown of the Packers week 1 was the final stage of Aaron Rodgers' holdout, right? Because you get him back in the building and you think you've won because all you had to do was get him Brandon Cooks. You give him no assurances with the contract. And then, did you ever see the movie Whiplash? Where there's that twist at the end where he gets the guy, and so here's Aaron Rodgers, or it's like maybe like Ocean's 13, and he comes off the field and he says, "You still need me to run the plays. You still need me to run the plays, but I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to blame it on you, and then I'm going to go somewhere else and win the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to be Aaron Rodgers until I get the assurances that I need." This is all an imaginary conversation I just came up with that happened on the plane ride home, but then everything makes sense. The Saints clubbed the Packers because Aaron Rodgers wasn't trying, and then they were secretly bad the whole time, and then it was George Clooney working with the bank robbers all along to get the money out of the casino. So,
well, it's a good thing that this podcast is being released Monday because we will see on Monday Night Football if your theory holds up.
Yeah. I love the theory. I love that you spoiled 2 movies that I haven't seen and will never see. And
I've actually seen Ocean's 11 or 12. Which one is this?
Well, I was saying like 11 was good, right? And then 12 and 13, the twists got so bad that like I didn't even understand I was being twisted until the end, and then they were like, but you were like, well, I got so lost at the beginning that I didn't even know I was being twisted. You know what I'm saying?
Someone in the movie theater had to explain to you what just happened.
Yeah, someone on a flight to Hawaii for the Pro Bowl. I watched all 3 of them back to back to back.
Wow, that's I don't know about that flight. And I should point out, by the way, it wasn't Randall Cobb.
Randall Cobb.
They should
Yeah,
they should be so lucky to get Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, he's been playing pretty well this year, actually.
Okay, so I swear to God, when I was putting together the outline, I did not put this game after the Panthers win intentionally, but we happen to be on Patriots and Jets right now. And
you're like the NFL scheduling committee. We had no idea.
I just want to say I'm glad this game wasn't in prime time because I'm glad no one was mic'd up and none of that. And I hope that in a couple of weeks this is forgotten. I don't think there's any reason to jump off the Zach Wilson bandwagon if you were already on it. But this was just Belichick putting a rookie Jets quarterback through the ringer in this one, and it was ugly. It got really ugly really quick.
I thought this stat from Rich Cimini that he posted after the game, works for ESPN. Rich posted that Zach Wilson is the 4th rookie top 5 pick with 0 passing touchdowns and 4+ interceptions in a game in the last 20 seasons. The last 3 quarterbacks to do it were all Jets. Sam Darnold and Mark Sanchez. And then before that, Alex Smith did it in 2005. So it's really representative of a lot of things. Foremost, the pain that the Jets have been through, particularly at the quarterback position and by extension, the whole team. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to make too much out of one rough day. I think Robert Saleh had the right message afterward that sometimes you just want to be boring and, just throw the boring play. What I will say though is like some of the interceptions didn't seem to come out of like any particularly confusing look. I mean, I don't know. Some of them were just, why was that thrown? And maybe something changed and, he got a little bit confused where the coverage was going. Maybe there was some rotation that wasn't obvious on the broadcast. But a couple of them you were just like, ooh, that was really rough.
Here's something to think about. If you're Robert Saleh, right? And I've been fascinated with this ever since the 49ers traded up to get the pick right behind them. So you leave Kyle Shanahan, who is, in league circles viewed as this, quarterback savant, and you leave and you go to the Jets, and you have the number 2 pick. You turn down trade overtures elsewhere, so it becomes clear you're taking a quarterback, right? And then all of a sudden, something clicks where everybody knows who you're taking, and then the second that happens, the 49ers trip over themselves to get right behind you to get somebody else. And then the first time your quarterback has a 4-interception game, are you looking around and saying, holy crap, did we do this wrong? And I'm not saying he is, and I'm not suggesting that, but do you think that lives in the back of his mind perpetually, because all this happened very quickly, right? As soon as it became clear that you were taking Zach Wilson, your former boss, who seems to know a lot about the quarterback position, ran in to get the next guy. And doesn't that freak you out at all? Like, it's like today specifically, wouldn't that freak you out a little bit? And Trey Lance didn't, this wasn't a big Trey Lance day or anything like that, but I'm just, and Mac Jones could have been another one of those players that you took and you got to see him the whole time. And I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about.
No, totally, Connor. I think that is a really great point. And I think also the Jets locking in on Wilson happened so fast,
yes.
Right? So every draft has the makings of decisions that will be questioned for years to come. But certainly being in a position where you can have your pick of anybody but Trevor Lawrence, and you lose the opportunity to get Trevor Lawrence, because of draft order, right? And then but you still get to get the second best quarterback in the class. Like, it's worse to make that decision wrong than to be where Bill Belichick is. And it's like, well, I picked the 5th best quarterback in the class, or the 5th one left on the board. So this, but if you're picking second and you get it wrong, it's definitely worse.
I don't know. Again, objectively, if these were just two teams wearing just, I don't know, some sort of some drab gray uniforms, you would watch this performance and sort of shrug your shoulders and be like, rookie quarterback. But just seeing the Patriots and the Jets, it's like, oh God, this reminds me of so many horrible things.
Yeah, and the pain that the Jets have been through at the position. That's why I thought that stat was a good one to read, because it's just sort of...
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's just a very familiar way of losing a game for Jets fans.
But it not only shows the woe of the Jets, but doesn't it also show the mastery of Belichick? I mean, he is a nightmare for a rookie quarterback. And while, to your point, a lot of the Zach Wilson stuff was not into vintage, twisty Belichickian coverage. But that said, I mean, whether he just at this point makes you think that there's going to be something that you're not going to be able to defeat, or there's this aura, or there is a portion of the game plan, it is fascinating the kind of dark cloud that he can cast over a game like this.
It's even worse. He wasn't even trying. He just threw out a vanilla shell defense and just made you waste a week of your life and then intercepted you 4 times. Let's go out to Indianapolis, where the Rams moved to 2-0 with a win over the Colts. This one got really interesting. Kind of a bummer at the end. It looked like Carson Wentz might have a chance to mount a last drive, but he had tweaked his ankle. He couldn't go in there. Jacob Eason went in and threw 2 pretty ugly passes, and that was the end of this one. But look, the Colts gave him a game. This is a tough game for the Rams to come east and play on the 10 a.m. body clock and all that stuff. But in the end, the Rams made a goal line stand in the first quarter, another one in the second quarter where they intercepted a shovel pass from Wentz that, I don't know, considering what's going on with Carson Wentz, maybe the left-handed shovel pass is not one you call for on the goal line at this stage. And the whole play got blown up. Jack Doyle never got to his spot, and it was just an easy interception. But yeah, I mean, the Colts hung around. Matthew Stafford ended up being too good, and that's kind of how this one played out.
Colts spiraling as predicted in our preseason bold predictions. Have them starting 0-5 before a catastrophic seafood poisoning incident turns their season around. So big beef game here. And but it was interesting. I mean, Matt Stafford didn't look entirely electric either at points in time. He was pressured. There was one throw that he, as he was throwing the ball, he got hit from behind, and like you kind of had that audible sort of gasp moment because it looked like one of those kind of like injury-producing sacks. I mean, luckily, nothing happened, but just by virtue of them being the Rams offense, I think they were able to survive and finesse their way to a win here. But, it wasn't one of those where I was overly blown away and didn't necessarily feel supported by the Rams after making them number one in my power rankings this week and receiving an awful lot of flack for that. So could have used a stronger performance there.
Yeah, it wasn't the best performance all around, but there are sometimes games like this that are kind of ugly, and they still found a way to win. So that's really the only takeaway that you can have. They found a way to win, and because they have Matthew Stafford, finding a way to win is a little bit easier than it would have been last season in some of those ugly games.
Okay, so we had the Patriots blow out the Jets, and we also had the Bills go down to Miami and blow out the Dolphins. So order restored in the AFC East here, even though it is a three-way tie at 1-1 at the top of the division right now. But look, I didn't think the Bills offensively look completely sharp at this point, but they didn't really have to. It was a combination of... it was Tua Tagovailoa obviously started the game. He ended up leaving with a rib injury in the first quarter. He, in his limited action, did not look like he was prepared for football. Jacoby Brissett came in, was pretty rusty, got a little bit hot, and then they just, a couple of drops by receivers, a fumble, a muffed punt. It was just sort of a combination of good Bills defense, really sloppy Dolphins offense, and just a lopsided win here.
Yeah, and to borrow a favorite phrase from Gary Gramling, it seems as though going from Tagovailoa to Brissett was a lateral move, and that is not a great referendum on your first-round pick. It's been a bumpy start to the season. Obviously, the Dolphins got a big win week 1 in Foxborough, but the early returns on Tua haven't been great after a lot of season of speculation about other quarterback moves that they might be considering, despite the absurdity of that at this particular moment in time. Brissett looked as capable as your first round pick, and I think that opens the door to a bigger conversation about when you do, the Dolphins would say they weren't tanking, and obviously that season worked out a little bit better than they thought, and they got a slightly lower pick than maybe they intended, but then Herbert gets picked after Tagovailoa, right? And so when you have the high pick, you have to nail the quarterback, and of course that's the biggest mystery of the NFL. Like, I'm not breaking any new ground here, but it's hard not to look at the way Herbert is playing and the early bumps with Tagovailoa and just kind of wonder, like, boy, would we take that one back?
It's that combined with the fact, they did hold the number 3 pick. And I do wonder if they thought they would get in on one of these veteran quarterbacks who it looked might be moving at some point this offseason. Or maybe they just were really bullish on Tua and it just hasn't really translated to the field. It's 5 quarters, so I don't want to make any broad proclamations about him at this point. But he didn't look good last week. I know ESPN Stats Information had him as an 0-for when pressured against the Patriots. He was 1 for 4 in this one. His one completion was a 3rd and long receiver screen to Jalen Waddle. He failed to account for defensive backs coming on blitzes on 2 sacks. Those are, they're sacks, but they're kind of on your quarterback. He's either got to adjust the protection or he has to get the ball out because there's a guy coming at him. And on top of that, he didn't throw the ball well. His best throw was an RPO that got erased by an illegal man downfield, and it was the illegal man downfield that was the reason that the throw was wide open. So he's not fitting tight window throws. He does not look comfortable when pressured. And look, I'm not bullish on Tua. I actually am very bullish on Jacoby Brissett, so I don't want to present this as something like in everybody knows type of an opinion. I'm really curious to see what would happen with Jacoby Brissett and an offense designed for him, which shouldn't look like the one that is designed for Tua, and what the Dolphins do going forward if this is an extended period of time where Brissett is going to be their quarterback.
I totally agree. I mean, and it's not just 5 quarters. It's been, I think that we've not come to the point where we can formulate a complete and total sample size, but I think we're getting close. And I think he would have to play extraordinarily well over like the next 2 or 3 starts to adjust where my opinion of the sample size is leading me, and I don't think anybody wanted this to succeed more than, I mean, I remember writing about the game that they played against the Cardinals last year, and him and Kyler were kind of trading these throws, and I thought, my God, this is the future, and how awesome is this? But we've never seen that quarterback again, and not even close. And, to the point where, I mean, I remember his first start last year, they couldn't complete screen passes, and it was just beyond anything that I'd ever seen at the NFL level. And again, he's completely capable, I think. I don't know what's going on there, but if you're Brian Flores and you have this roster and you have the rest of the roster primed to play for you, I mean, I don't think there's a coach in the league that gets guys to play harder than Brian Flores. I think you have the leeway and you have the equity with them to be like, we're not dealing with this anymore.
This is going to sound like an insult, and I promise you it is not. Andy Dalton won a lot of games on a Bengals team that was really good around him. He had a really good supporting cast, a great offensive line. That's kind of what Tua needs based on what we've seen from him in a season plus at this point. He's just a guy who looks like he's going to have to be lifted by the players around him, and they've tried to do that a little bit. The offensive line isn't quite there, but they've upgraded the weapons, and we'll see how it is going forward. But he might just be that kind of guy who is kind of in that, somewhere between a bottom third starter and a high-end backup where you're just really going to have it together around him in order to sort of maximize what he does, as opposed to a guy who is going to come in and lift everyone around him and make everything better. But still lots of time to go, and for all we know, if there's a place in the multiverse where he didn't hurt his ribs on that first quarter throw and ended up catching fire and winning this game or something like that, but there's just not a whole lot of evidence that would lead you to believe that this is moving in the right direction at this point.
One thing to bring up quickly, though, I still think, despite a 35-0 victory, sort of bolstered Jenny's case for not being super hot on the Bills. I was not blown away by the Bills. They won 35-0, but I was not their defense got better, but I think their offense is just the offense from last year, which was great. But you put so much equity into the defense that you can't, you don't give Brian Daboll and Josh Allen the tools to diversify what made you good last year. And I think it's interesting. It's just not as fluid and as beautiful. Last year's Buffalo offense was you could paint that and hang it in a museum. This year, we have not really seen that level of fluidity, and I think it's just kind of interesting and something to, nitpick in a 35-0 win, sure, but I just think, I'm preemptively silencing Jenny's haters, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, actually, Connor, while I did say that, you, before I made that prediction, were on top of it, saying that the Bills hadn't made the moves this offseason to support the further growth and diversification of the offense. And I think that was a really smart point that you made, because it's always hard the year after you have this breakout. It's always hard the next year to continue growing things. So maybe they will. It's only 2 games. And like you said, it was a 35-0 victory. So it does feel a little bit like nitpicking. This was a game that they kind of, you don't ever have to have a game in week 2, but, it was a game that was, sort of important to keep them on the right track. But yeah, they still have some coalescing to do.
I think to sum it up, as usual, great job by Jenny and Connor, and then as always,
Gary,
and then Gary,
also
who
on the show.
Yeah, Gary, who's also on the show, picked the Jaguars to make the playoffs, and let's. I think we're getting into them next in the outline. So let's see how they did against the Broncos.
So the Jaguars continue to participate in football games here. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna hold back. I'm gonna give it a couple of weeks here before I don't know, Urban Meyer becomes my John Gruden or whoever this might be. Yeah, I mean, look, they host Denver. I think it's funny. I'm thinking over this game, and I was just kind of like, it was encouraging that they lost to a good team this week. Like a team with a really good defense stopped them, as opposed to going into Houston and being like, Lovie Smith runs cover 2? We had no idea. Yeah, it was a good opening drive. And then you just watch it. And again, the Broncos defense is very good. You had some inclement weather in this one, and that's, those are kind of your excuses for this week. But it's just a quarterback who looks completely untrusting of what he's seeing. And, based on what we've seen so far, he probably shouldn't be trusting what he's seeing. It's just, it's not working.
I think if I were Trevor Lawrence, I would use all the tools at my disposal to formulate a shadow game plan with my offense that has nothing to do with what you're taught all week. And then you just sort of run it, and you say if it works, then I'll give you credit for it, guys. But if not, then I'm just going to get you guys fired anyway because I'm Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, and again, you have to take into account the first week. Urban Meyer's first ever game as a professional football coach might have been a little overmatched there schematically. Second week, you have the Broncos, who made the Giants look foolish, and then the Giants hung up 30 points on Washington, which is a really good defense, So I think, I think that's important to consider. Again, I mean, I feel like I've been saying this ad nauseum to the point where it's annoying everybody, but the Broncos are going to be like one of the 3 best defenses in the league this year, and so you take all that into consideration. Trevor Lawrence had a nice touchdown pass to put them ahead 7-0. So they were in this for a moment. All those are positive things you could say about Gary's Jaguars, but then it sort of falls apart there. And nice little game from Teddy Bridgewater too.
Feels like Trevor Lawrence is headed on the same path that Baker Mayfield was, where the franchise needs to try a couple head coaches before they find one that works.
Great comparison.
I was going to say, I love Freddie Kitchens, but this has a very Freddie Kitchens feel to it right now as far as how this season is unfolding. I do just want to point out there's no written record of me picking the Jaguars making the playoffs. So
yeah, he backed out of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Damn.
But we know, Connor. We know.
Well, if you've been humiliated publicly with your predictions as badly as I have, you're kind of hoping for a little more fireworks in that department, And that's all.
Here you go, Connor. Cleveland goes. They're at home. They host the Texans. They end up getting on the board here after a really impressive Week 1 loss. I mean, they gave the Chiefs all they could handle down in Kansas City. So Browns are on the board. Baker Mayfield makes a couple plays, has to leave at one point. But I don't know. To me, the story is the Browns won a game they should have won. The other story is, a lot of people didn't want to be part of the Texans for reasons that we see. And I think this team through 2 games has just been kind of a reminder that if you get guys who want to buy into what you want to do, and you get them playing hard, they're all professional football players, and you can hang in these games, and you can knock off a Jaguars, and you can go to Cleveland, and you can stay with the Browns. Tyrod Taylor got hurt late in the first half, hamstring injury. He'll miss the Thursday night game that's coming up against the Panthers this week. But yeah, I mean, they kind of gave the Browns all they could handle.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taylor is a guy who is easy to rally around. I think people around the league have seen his career arc and some of the unfortunate circumstances that he's been in, and he's certainly shown good things. So he's just a guy that you could see his teammates rallying around. But he gets hurt, and now the Texans are in this very uncomfortable situation. They're playing on a short week. Are you going to play Davis Mills? The head coach doesn't shut the door on, he wouldn't answer. He said, I think we'll see, when asked if they would play Deshaun Watson, which certainly doesn't seem in the cards at this point. But, they're in an awkward situation right now.
I think, to your point, I mean, it is sort of like, it's sort of like this weird squad of like castaway football players who were good at one point, and I think this roster is at best still something where at the trade deadline they completely strip it for parts and amass a bunch of mid-round, mid to late round picks so they can start building the roster the way that they want to build it. But yeah, I mean, I think that, I guess to sort of steal both of your points simultaneously, if you have a quarterback who is likable and then you have a bunch of guys who at least know how to play, you can kind of get in there and you can make a little, what did our good friend, editor Drew say? You can make a little chicken salad out of it, Jenny.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. This is chicken salad.
49ers go east to Philadelphia. They finished their little East Coast road swing with a 2-0 record here. This one was a defensive battle after they sort of lit it up against Detroit. This one was more of a slugfest here. I do want to highlight D'Amico Ryans real quick, the first-year defensive coordinator. And it's kind of funny when you follow along on Twitter, and Ryans is taking a much more aggressive tack when it comes to blitzing. Not that Robert Saleh never blitzed, but it was not something he did frequently. Ryans really went after Jalen Hurts in this game. And I think a lot of 49ers fans felt very uneasy about that. But in the end, what you had was they gave up one big play. They gave up a 91-yard pass on a blitz, which, they got burned. That's what happens sometimes. Other than that, it worked, though. I mean, there was one play where Miles Sanders slipped a tackle in the backfield on a blitz and ended up getting a chunk play. But that was pretty much it. The Eagles really didn't do a whole lot. And one, that's good. It's good when you don't give up a lot of points. But two, Jalen Hurts is a guy, especially in the early Sirianni games here, that I would imagine is really not fun to game plan for if you're a defensive coach. Sirianni is using him a little more creatively than last year's staff did, and we saw them really put up numbers against Atlanta, and it didn't come this week. And I think D'Amico Ryans deserves a lot of credit for what he did in Philadelphia on Sunday.
Yeah, Gary, I think that's a really important takeaway from this game is that, one, Shanahan identified a strong replacement for Saleh, and Ryans has certainly been up to the task. And two, it is very hard to defend a quarterback like Hurts, especially when you don't have a lot of information on him in the Sirianni offense. And the debut was as good as it was, but you don't have a lot of time to adjust to the tape of the debut. So I think all of those are really strong testaments to the job Ryans is doing.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you bring in a recent former player, I think that especially on the defensive side of the ball, you've seen those experiments pay off a little bit more, and guys are kind of have a little bit better of an understanding of a defense that can kind of touch all parts and allow everybody to kind of feel like they have more of a hand in it. And so I think if you're blitzing more, if you're trusting your defense to blitz more, despite maybe what some would say is sort of a little bit of a downgraded secondary, I think that fires people up. I think it gets them, and it gets them playing well. And, I think that does negate the best of what Jalen Hurts does because, what he showed you in that week 1 game was that after a strong offseason, he was able to dissect an NFL caliber defense. And so all of a sudden you're saying, okay, this guy can play, and now we have to bring something else to the table. And so kudos to them for bringing something else to the table.
Absolutely, and we'll see going forward whether this was a matter of just sort of diversifying and being able to go into a different bag of tricks for certain weeks, or this is something that Ryans is going to do consistently. But look, it's Josh Norman is playing major snaps on the outside. I mean, it's not a strong secondary at this point, so it is a risk here. Let's wrap it up in Tampa with the defending champs, who I don't know. Look, Atlanta was game in this one. It looked early like they were going to get blown out, and then they sort of came back, and it was a 3-point game with 10 minutes to go, and then you got a Brady touchdown drive and 2 pick sixes in the fourth quarter to make the score particularly ugly. But my only real take from this game is I was going head-to-head with Dan Gartland, the wonderful extra mustard / wrestling editor at SI.com in our Sports Illustrated League, and I had the game in the bag going into the fourth quarter here. Matt Ryan is my quarterback. Bucks defense is his defense, and just everything got turned on its head down the stretch here. So I am in need of a GoFundMe right now, is what I'm saying.
Oh, man. I was going to say that was the big takeaway from the game. I no longer play fantasy football, but I couldn't help but think, boy, whoever has the Bucks defense is really cashing in. I am sorry that you were on the other end of that, Gary.
I accept your pity.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, and this will be another dumb thing that I say that you can clip and play when the Falcons are getting ready for the playoffs. But someone asked me the other day, they're like, we had our head coaches list come out last week, and they said, well, what jobs do you think are going to be open? It's kind of a weird time in the league right now where it didn't seem like there's a ton of gigs that you walked into the season and said these guys would definitely lose their jobs, maybe like we did last year. But I mean, Arthur Smith is looking a little bit like one and done. I mean, just through 2 weeks. I mean, I'm just saying, and I'm not saying it's going to happen this way, but it was 2 weeks where grossly in the first half you looked wholly unprepared for games. And granted, the second game's against Tom Brady, and he's going to make a lot of people look like that. But this is the part of the game that you script for. This is the part that all of your game planning goes into, and to whiff that badly on two opponents in a row, especially one being the Eagles, and this is kind of a team that's probably going to end up being middling in some way. It's like, man, I mean, that's if I'm the Falcons, I'm freaking out a little bit. That's a little scary to me.
Yeah, I mean, they made it interesting, but I agree with you, Connor. I do think, even the Jaguars looked good early in their game against the Broncos, right? So that first bit, you design the plays, you come up with stuff that you think is going to work the best. And yeah, it should be a little bit more, you should have an impressive opening script, especially like in your first game of the season. And, obviously this was the Bucks, like you said, but, yeah, I don't know. It's and the other thing that's strange is they made this choice to go this route of we're going to stay with Matt Ryan. So we think they must have had some expectation, right, in doing that they could be middling or mediocre this year. They wouldn't have done that if their expectation was they were going to be bad. They would have just started the rebuild. So they chose this path. And then, the early returns it doesn't look like that was a good path to choose. Not saying anything about Ryan, but it's just like you expected that, this would be a team that could maybe be in the mix for a wild card spot. And certainly they haven't looked like that.
No, it seems like they incorrectly calibrated where they were in their rebuild here. And I will say, defensively, this smells and tastes and looks a little bit like what we saw in Dallas last year, where you had a team that's really built for Dan Quinn and a lot of like single high looks and that style of defender. And now you have Dean Pease running it, who does a lot more. It's just a more diverse and complex, relatively speaking, type of approach here. And the pieces just don't really fit right now. And you spent your number 4 pick on a tight end, and it's gonna take a little while to sort of get this thing right defensively. Not to mention, by the time you get it right defensively, you probably will need a new quarterback and some sort of new set of players offensively. So I don't know. It's not great. It seems like they should have rethought the whole win now approach at least 2 weeks in. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week. The MMQB Monday Morning NFL Podcast is Jenny Rentis, Connor Orr, and me, Gary Gramling. We are produced by Shelby Royston. SI's executive producer of podcasts is Scott Brody, and thanks as always to senior podcast producer Dan Bloom, the one person we know listens to this show every single week. Mark Moravik is emeritus editor of the MMQB, and Andy Benoit is the founder of the MMQB NFL Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this feed on Apple Podcasts, and once you do, please leave a rating and review, because it really does help other people find the show, which is also available on Spotify, Stitcher, SI.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts.